Hello, everyone. This is Rick with the Cyber Pro podcast. 5 questions in 9 minutes because hackers never sleep. Let's get to it. Joe, first question, easiest question of the day. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Joe Gross. I'm the director of solution engineering at Graylog, and so I'm responsible for all of the technical people that help people decide if our product is the right fit for them. And I also head up our community and our Graylog Labs project, which is just trying to bring cybersecurity knowledge to the broader audience of Graylog as a whole and the
That's
sim
awesome.
space, I
Yeah,
guess.
no, that's awesome. Thank you for adding in that sim component.
Yeah.
Talk to me why you love being a cybersecurity professional.
Yeah. So I think there's two reasons. There's kind of a personal reason, which is um, that my oldest son, he's 6, is convinced that every day what I do is save the internet, which is just the best feeling, right? Like, pretty convinced he thinks that I wear a cape every day. So that's kind of the top one. But the other the other part of it is I just love solving problems. And there's kind of no bigger problem out there than cyber, because you have this group of people that are kind of that have these inherent needs that they need to meet, and this is the way that they're going to meet those needs, right? They're gonna get this money to go be able to put food on their table, do whatever they need to do, and obviously it grows into larger criminal organizations from there. But you have this group of people that is incredibly motivated, and then you have kind of us on the blue side that are also incredibly motivated by defending these organizations that we work for, and it's just kind of this constant power struggle, right? This constant push pull, and I think it's just fascinating to be a part of, trying to constantly outsmart each other. Uh, it's just super fun and always has been.
Nice. I'm going to throw a curveball question in.
Yeah, please.
You just mentioned something about being a blue member. I know that to be a blue team member. Why did you choose blue team versus red team? And what are your thoughts on that?
So I didn't originally choose blue team. I got my start in cybersecurity, uh, doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing on the internet. And got we'll call it scared straight in college, and started working for the university in their cybersecurity, in their kind of security services organization. So I was working, doing like malware analysis and cleanups and all those kinds of things. Um, and and from there, it just kind of grew into this kind of love of balancing risk with reward, right? And just kind of the constant analytics of it. So I got to dive into the data behind it, right? And understand, hey, yeah, we can put in place this control, but it's going to limit these 40 people from being able to do their job, and it's going to cost us $3 million, right? And so, yeah, what started as being fun, trying to figure out how to break things and analyzing how I could get into to places I wasn't supposed to be, turned into a different kind of analysis, right? And it's kind of I got scared straight into it.
That's
Really
that
big part.
great story. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that's a good pivot then, right? You have the best of both sides of the world of cybersecurity in your brain.
Yeah.
When I say cybersecurity is a top concern, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it means a couple of different things. I think, from one perspective, right, it is something that today every single person is thinking about in some way, shape, or form, right? From cybersecurity professionals that do it every day and executives, down to 9-year-olds getting their Fortnite accounts hacked, right? Like, I mean, it is something that is actually kind of a globally connecting issue, which is kind of a unique thing for us, right? So I think that's one piece of it, and it affects every person. Everyone has lost money or had their password stolen or something like that, and the risk is real for everyone. But then I think also kind of in a different direction, right? Um, we have real vulnerability, especially in the United States, and with our critical infrastructure and where that sits. um, we we actually have we saw like the Colonial Pipeline last year, where this is there are very real world consequences to not getting this right going forward. And the risk associated with ignoring it is just getting larger. And so, yeah, top priority. I mean, it's a top priority because it literally has the ability, or a top concern, it has the ability to change everything about the way that we live our life. And I think that is both something that I think can bring people together around the issue of cybersecurity, and something that I think scares a lot of people into inaction and being kind of afraid to, and then just kind of ignoring the space.
No, that's great insight. And speaking of insight, what insight do you want to share with our cyber network?
Yeah, so the last 5 or 6 years of my career in cyber have been centered around logs and SIM. and it is so much fun to deal with these small pieces of data that just flow in constantly. But I want to share this concept that I'm seeing more and more, where people are taking their SIMs and turning them into what Malware Jake affectionately calls a log toilet. So I'm gonna give him a little shout out there. um, and it is, and the truth is that you have vendors that are large and influential and have great tools that are going to organizations and telling them, hey, just put everything in here. Put everything in here. We'll be able to handle it, I swear. Right. But what's happening is we're not putting the forethought into the stuff that's going in and making conscious decisions as to what actually matters. Right. So things like EDR telemetry logs, right? So how your EDR was performing at the time of an incident, not super important long term, right? It's interesting short term. It's interesting, in that moment to be able to go and look, oh yeah, Susie's laptop in finance has messed up and the EDR is the issue. Yeah, that's interesting, right? But when you have a large scale incident, that isn't going to help you in a lot of ways, right? But one that we see people leave off all the time that they don't retain for enough period of time, or they don't take in at all, is DHCP logs. And you get into an environment, and it's great that that this piece of malware originated on 192.168.34.5, right? It's great that that, but unless you can tell me at that date, at that time, what machine that was, our investigation's done. Our incident response is over. There's nothing more I can do for you, right? And so I'm gonna move on, right? And so there's this business conversation around, we need to retain our logs because there's compliance requirements and there's regulatory requirements and things like that. But then there's also, we lose sight of the fact that we bring in logs for a very specific reason outside of compliance, and it's truly detection and response to cyber incidents, right? And if those logs aren't there for that purpose, maybe you need a different system for those logs. Maybe you need to work on segmenting those logs out into something different. But in general, right, we need to be asking ourselves up front, is this log going to directly contribute to an alarm that is going to be triggered in this SIM, that is directly tied to a risk that we've identified in a risk assessment, that we have determined that this is the way that we're going to mitigate that risk, right? We need to ask that question up front. And then the next question we need to ask is, even if that's a no, when that alarm goes off, what supporting data do I need to investigate that, to be able to know what happened to get me to that place, right? And be able to walk that incident backwards so that I'm not blind when that alarm goes off. And so I think that's really kind of the core that I want to get out of, and kind of the time that we have today is begin to ask yourself those questions of logging is an important fundamental piece of all parts of technology. Cybersecurity logging is specific, and we need to be specific about the logs that we take in and be considerate of those things. And if that doesn't fit with the logging that your app devs need to do, or that your IT infrastructure team needs to do, or something along those lines, then you need to consider how you handle those logs separately and handle those logs differently. It doesn't necessarily mean you need a different vendor. It doesn't necessarily mean you need a different system, but it requires a different level of consideration. And, if you have a good vendor, they'll tell you how to do it.
Love it. Joe, here's the final and fun question for you. What's your favorite piece of retro technology that makes you smile?
Mine is a Nintendo 64, which I don't know if it's necessarily like super retro, but it was my childhood in every way. So yeah, I mean, growing up kind of in like the early 90s, coming home and, jumping on immediately to like Mario 64 or Super Smash Bros. Or whatever it was, doing LAN parties with my friends at their houses, like packing them up and bringing them with me. That was for many years a core tenet, and and something that I will always stop and play if I find one somewhere, out at like a barcade or something along those lines. Will always steal my attention away.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, I was a GoldenEye guy, so I feel you.
Yeah. 100%. GoldenEye was the best.
Joe, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Cyber Pro podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on new podcasts and bonus content.